This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Ethan.
I guess this is episode 2 or 3? I guess it depends depends if we throw the NASRO episodes up before this or not, but
we'll see. We had a few good conversations at NASRO. Ones that are pretty typical that we have are trying to get law enforcement and the education staff on the same sheet of music and why that continues to be a struggle. Yeah, look forward to those if they came out. Well, it was pretty noisy in that environment, so the recording themselves might not have come out so well, but we'll see.
We'll see how good the editing is.
Yeah,
or was.
Yeah. What was fun was we had Tyler, I forget Tyler's last name, from a sheriff's office in Kansas. He had been a guest of ours previously.
Yeah, when we first did Coffee with Kelly live
at NASRO.
Like 2 years prior.
2 years ago. So that was fun.
Yeah.
Because he was, if I remember correctly, he was a new SRO. And now he's there with 2 years of experience under his belt. And it was interesting to see the difference in the perspective and the things that he has changed and how he is working more to influence the safety and security of their schools. So I hope that one comes out if any of them do, because I think it was a good conversation.
Nice.
It was fun. Yeah.
We'll continue with our little news segment part here, and I'm going to actually see if I can play this short little clip. So this video is actually from Chattanooga, Tennessee, around a class reunion. So this should pop right up. There we go.
Chattanooga police responded to a shots fired call around 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon at the Tyner Community Center. 4 people were taken to the hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. The shooting happened during an event hosted by Tyner Academy as part of their alumni weekend. Graduates from 29 classes attended and could be seen mingling in the tents. Witnesses say everyone was having a good time until they heard the gunshots echo across the field.
And all of a sudden, those shots just started going everywhere. And little kids and babies and everything was on the ground. It was bad. It was real bad.
Jeffrey Herman says he knew exactly what was happening the moment it happened.
Oh, yeah. It was gunshots.
His first reaction, along with the hundreds in attendance,
to get on the ground, take cover.
Herman says he and his friends walked away injury-free, but amid the panic and chaos, some people were injured while trying to run from the scene. Some took to social media to share what they experienced. One user posted, "Thank you, Lord, for saving my daughters and granddaughter today as they had to run, duck, crawl, and trample, dodging bullets. 2 of my babies had minor injuries, mostly anxiety, cuts, and bruises." Herman graduated in 1990, and the shooting was a shocking realization.
It makes me feel real bad, and it's sad that the little kids got to come up and see this type of stuff. For the younger generation, the little kids that's coming up watching, it's a bad example.
It was interesting in the beginning there. They're talking about like ducking, like they didn't run, they just laid on the ground.
Well, sometimes that's sufficient, right?
I guess that goes to the point that you always make, right? Is he talks about like little kids and babies being there. It's like, how far or how fast can you actually run if you've got kids in tow? So that was a pretty good example right there.
Yeah. So when you look at run, hide, fight, This is a circumstance in which run, hide, fight was developed. Run, hide, fight was not necessarily developed with schools in mind. It was developed when you're in an environment where you have to worry about yourself. So a festival, a concert, maybe. If you are responsible for somebody else, run, hide, fight is contingent on whether or not those who you are responsible can also take whatever action that you're taking. Obviously, in the best case scenario, if there is a shooting, you want to be somewhere else, right? You want to be away from where you're at. That's best case. But if you can't do that because you are now responsible for your family members, young students, maybe even adult students, you might be legally responsible for the caring of adult children. I'm referencing there as high school students, seniors that are now legally adults, but they're still under your care. Working through that, you have to understand the circumstances, and your options become more limited when you have to care for somebody else. You're talking about, this was essentially a big family reunion, school reunion picnic, right? People are bringing the shades, they're bringing chairs. It looked like it was out on the athletic field, maybe a soccer field, football field, or something like that. It's meant to be a gathering of the community, right? And so they didn't restrict it to just alumni. It was alumni and their families. And I think one of them said, my babies, my grandbabies. So now you're talking about 2, 3, maybe even more generations that are all there, right? So now you feel like you have an obligation to protect those, right? You have to understand that. Now, the question why we brought this to the forum today, to the podcast, was because if this is a school sanctioned event, many reunions are, many are not. Who's responsible for making sure those people are safe?
If you're essentially the host, I think you're responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like if you're inviting someone into your home, you're responsible. That's kind of just how, if someone walks up your stairs or something, and then your back deck isn't built correctly and it breaks, so they get injured or whatever. I mean, that's on you. So I mean, you're the host. So I think if who's ever hosting it should be responsible.
Let's say it's the alumni association, not necessarily the school, but the school is partnered with them. The schools are certainly assisting them wherever they can, because the alumni are the legacy of the school. And the alumni are the connection between past generations and current generations. When you have an alumni association or a class association where a single class, but this sounds like it was much more than just one class. It wasn't the 25th anniversary or reunion of a particular class.
Yeah, it seemed like
a gathering of different classes. And that's pretty common. In fact, the high school that I graduated from, they have a reunion weekend, and it's the same weekend every year. There's volunteer fire department fundraiser barbecue that goes on every year. I think it's the weekend after July 4th. Essentially the same weekend every year. There are people from almost every class at this reunion. Now they focus on the ones that have the milestone reunions, but it's billed as a huge thing for the entire community. It's a small community, and I think the average class size, I don't know if it's grown or not. It's been 40 years since I've been back there. The average graduating class is probably around 100 or so. Ours was a little bit less than that. So it's not a big gathering until you have 20 of them that are all showing up, right? And you're going to have more than that, more than 100 people for 20 classes when you have a big reunion, like a milestone, the 5th year, the 10th year, the 20th. 25th, those types of milestones. So I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know this. And the question being, who's responsible? Anything that a school sanctions or is associated with, if it's been a formalized or is traditional in nature associated with the school, then the school needs to have some involvement. It could be just, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? What do you need? How do we help you, right? When we start talking about security and safety, and I know people are going to push back on this, but I do think because the associations and the class organizations, they're all reaching out to their alumni, their members, in association with the school. So I think the school has to kind of provide some guidance there. Most people, probably attorneys, will say there's no association here. There's no obligation. I think I could argue a point. I might lose the point, but I think I could argue the point that this is a school event. Do they have to control it? I don't think so, but providing a checklist and saying, hey, consider these things.
This is what we do in the school, so we're going to give you this checklist and we recommend that you follow these.
Yep, there's a lot of events that are very similar. Fundraisers, sporting events, even celebrations, right? At schools, like a lot of schools are the location for 4th of July. Especially if you are holding these events on a campus, then you become the expert in security and safety for that location. And even if it's not on campus, but it's at a community center or a park or something like that, you still likely have more experience and more expertise in those events than the people who are in charge of them, the organizers of those events. So offering to be that sort of sounding board, resource provider, at least with your expertise and information, is probably a good path to go.
All right, so we'll go into like the main part of what we're going to talk about today.
The meat and potatoes?
Meat and potatoes. I had some variants of Wagyu ribeye last night. Oh man, that was so good.
That almost sounds like to me that it's like a hamburger is a variant of Wagyu meat.
So like Wagyu, you have different levels of Wagyu. Like you have different like grades. Like meat has different grades of quality. I don't know what the grades are specifically, but there's like ones that you get from some, like you have to be like a registered butcher to get the highest grade. Like you have to pass all these things or whatever to actually even acquire it.
Sounds like marketing. It sounds like you have a definition and then you have all these. Well, I'm almost there. So do you have like Wagyu or Wowgu, right?
Yeah. Funny, Kelly. Funny.
I'm a funny guy. Not as funny as I think I am, but I'm funny.
So we are going to talk about what we believe is the definition between collectors and builders. Now, this might actually be a little bit more product focused than we normally do. However, I almost like to think of it as like a public service announcement kind of deal. You know, it's like if you're a school district and you're looking to we're going into the new year. I mean, maybe you've already established this, but you know, if you're looking for those new systems, it's important to know who you're buying them from. And it's very important to know what they work with, you know, integration wise.
We're going to look at that certainly from a very high level. Mm-hmm. But we're also going to look at builders and collectors in the context of leadership. Mm-hmm. Not so much how your systems work together, which is a huge thing, but in both instances, we're going to look at what differentiates people from each other, whether they're providing a system or a product, or they are providing leadership. Because what we're really looking at is huge differentiators to the point that people are talking about it without understanding what it is. They're talking about what they need and they're trying to figure it out, But it all comes down to this perspective, this concept that we're going to discuss today.
So I guess I'll start off with we'll talk about collectors.
Mm-hmm. A collector, from our context and our perspective. So let me take one step back. So this whole discussion starts out with people asking us specifically when we're at conferences and so forth, what differentiates you between everyone else out there? There are many, many reasons that we differentiate ourselves from other vendors. Trying to list that to somebody who doesn't understand all of the different features and what they do can be challenging.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I say visitor management, we do visitor management. Well, they do visitor management, but they don't do it the same way we do it. Or we do alerting, they do alerting, but they don't do it the same way we do it. So trying to get them into the details can be very challenging. I like to phrase it this way. In our industry, there are two types of companies: builders and collectors. And when you look at the development of, or the not the development so much as the evolution of our industry in school safety, emergency communications, emergency management, there's this evolution, and it's a natural evolution. You have a bunch of people who are software developers, systems developers, and so forth, who hear a news story or see a situation or a set of circumstances, and it's heartbreaking, especially when we're talking about incidences that occur at our schools. So they decide, I have a solution for that. We could do this, and this will help with that. When you start answering that question, then you start developing your solution. At some point, you want that solution to become profitable. It's a business. The issue is they don't really understand emergency processes. They don't understand the entire need. They don't understand. And this is the same problem that we have with legislators.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
They sit down and say, what would have stopped, or what would be the biggest impact we can mandate from the legislator's perspective?
And they just
to
got these
help.
blinders on.
They're very narrowly focused. They want one quick win and so forth. And right now, what we're seeing is panic buttons is an example of that.
The mission is right, and like the heart is right, but gotta look at everything,
Now we have to look at the entire picture, and most of the people in our business don't understand that larger picture and the relationship between these different systems that are being developed, and whether or not the system that they're developing will actually have an impact on school safety. So that's the problem, right? So we have a bunch of these disparate systems being developed because we have a bunch of people out there trying to develop their solution. In some cases, in order to promote their product, they're misinforming the public. They're misinforming the education institutions as to what is safe. Define safe.
It's called integrity, Kelly. That's the word you're looking for, is a lack of integrity.
Well, yes and no, because they don't know. It is certainly an integrity issue.
Yeah.
If, I'm not saying that there aren't integrity issues out there. I am saying let's give people initially the benefit of the doubt, and it's just ignorance, not knowing, not understanding, and preying upon the ignorance and misunderstanding of the customer for profit reasons. And this is why we get into some of this collectors. Now, so you start with that foundation of somebody says, oh, we need this, whatever this happens to be. And Then they sell that, they make a bunch of money. But then somebody asks, well, can you do this? Can you add this? Can you make it look like this or that? Right? So now this evolutionary process is starting. For us, that evolutionary process has been going on for the last 13, 14 years. And for others, it's been a very short period of time. So here's the answer to your question. Your question was, what are collectors? Collectors are those people who haven't developed their systems. They might have developed their foundational system, but they don't understand the whole process. And they say, as an example, I need a camera system. I need to sell cameras, but they don't have a camera system. So they buy a camera system.
Let's go. Oh, I'll take this one.
Yeah.
This is a small enough company that I can buy.
Right. Or I'm gonna
slap my label on it.
Or I have a panic button, and it works very well as a panic button. But panic buttons, as you know, my position, are generally marketed and used right to bang after something has already started. So now they need an alerting system. Rather than to develop their own alerting system, they go out and buy a company that has already developed a system. And they do that time and time again. Somebody identifies, oh, I need this. Okay. They go out and buy threat management company. They go out and buy a visitor management company. They go out and buy a reunification platform or what have you. They go out and do all of this stuff.
Intervention platform or...
Yeah. So they start buying all these different platforms, but they don't understand how they're connected in the incident timeline. They don't know how one gets from one to the other. How do you integrate them? And many times they can't integrate because they weren't developed by the same people.
Right. And so to add to that, the people that built the product that they're buying may also not understand how all those pieces fit together. The original people that built it may have built it for that one singular purpose, and they weren't thinking of like the bigger picture of like, let's assume that this is going to integrate with all these other systems in the future. Like they may or may not have thought of that. So
you have two problems. You have the buyer of that company not understanding the whole process and not understanding where it fits. They just have a customer somewhere asking for it. So they say, okay, we'll provide it, and they'll buy this company and start providing that system. But you're absolutely right. The company that was just purchased didn't develop it, or may be lacking in their development of a total solution, and they didn't build their product with the intent of integrating it or adding other features to it or what have you, right? So that becomes an issue in not only the effectiveness of all of these disparate platforms that are being sold by a single company working together. You're much more likely to have a failure point, and you're much more likely to have integration and user management issues and so forth, because they're not even building them so that the user experience is the same. And so that becomes an issue. Now, what's the other side of that? The builders are those who start with a product, and as they continue to evolve, they continue to ask questions. How do we make our product better? Not how do we buy a product, but how do we make ours better? How do we add additional functionality to make our school safer, to make the user experience better? That's the question they're asking. And what is missing? What is missing from our portfolio, I guess?
And probably, I want to say 9 times out of 10, it's not coming from internal. It's coming from external influence. It's coming from our account managers working with our customers and saying, here's the pain points we're hearing of what's missing. Here's what they need. And it's like this back and forth of, it's almost like a beta test essentially of features. And it's like, this is how a builder creates stuff.
It's not so much because beta test is a bad word, right?
Well, I mean, it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that like you're not just like hearing something and then from the industry and going, oh yeah, let's go buy that.
Yeah.
As a builder, you're intimately working with your customers so that you're refining your solution to make sure that it works exactly the way that they need it to.
So that's the differentiator.
Mm-hmm.
Is the builders are in a continuous process of improvement.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the differentiator. And frankly, that's one of the primary functions of my job, is to be that sounding board. Hey, what do you think about this, Kelly? What are we missing? What are we seeing? What direction? And trying to help our executive staff understand where things need to go. Not that I have anything to do with the actual development of anything other than just making sure that it looks the way that I think it should. There's a lot of work. As I like to say, I'm the idea guy. And there's lots of idea guys in this company. So it's not just Kelly. The fact is when they start looking at the process of improving the platform by adding features and functionality, one of the first things they do is, where does it intersect with our current products? If I have this functionality, how do I get to this next functionality? Where and when it's needed, right? So that's the key to success here, is because we're looking at many individual products. We could sell a bunch of them separately. And if we did, they would all work together, because in many cases, it's the simple turning on or off a button.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference between builders and collectors.
I just want to throw out an example of, like, the most recent thing was a new panic badge that we came out with, right? So like the software internally is all us. And then, I don't know, a few months, maybe a year before that was our visitor management. There's a process where you can actually have the visitor management into the badge, into the emergency alerting, and they all just like flow together, especially if you're talking about like visitors or a contractor. You could actually assign a visitor or a substitute one of these badges when they enter in through the visitor management, and now they're connected to the emergency alerting.
Yep.
And it's all just like, it just works.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Mm-hmm. It works across our platform. Now, before we move on to the leadership perspective, because that's really the perspective I really want to spend a little bit of time on, is as we were talking about this recently, the question came up is, what's the difference between a collector, a builder, and an integrator?
Yeah, that's definitely an important point to talk about.
Yeah, so because we integrate with a lot of companies that don't provide what we provide, and we don't provide what they provide.
Mm-hmm.
So staying in our lane is a big deal. Mapping, video cameras, we don't do cameras. Gunshot detection, gun detection, those types of things we don't do. But we have companies that do that, and we can integrate with those. We're not going out and buying that solution just because somebody wants it. We have partners that do very, very good at it. We have partners that's their lane. Let's keep it there. But if our schools want that, we can integrate with them. The integration can be done by either or, the builder or the collector. But the experience is probably going to be much better because we're already building to understand the need for integration and the partners. And you'll look at the partners, our Safety Forge partners, we have 75 plus partners, right? So
we're always adding more. It's like
we're always adding more. Yep. Because there are so many solutions out there that we have to integrate with. Now, I want to skip to the, unless you have something else you want to say, I want to skip to the leadership side of this.
When I think of the difference between collecting and integrating, someone would say, well, what's the difference there? Maybe a software level, I guess, is, when you are collecting a solution, which means one company is buying another, essentially. What's happening there typically is the company that's being bought, most of the people there are probably not going to be working for the new company anymore. You're going to grab like the top person from each branch, I guess, or each
maybe
head marketing person, maybe, and then you get a couple people from development or something, and then you're left with this. I like to think of it like you're just being handed this whole huge Lego kit without instructions. Here you go, and you have to learn how to build it. You have to learn what piece goes where. But as you're integrating with another company, you're working with people who have built it.
That's right.
They know to speak the language. They have the instructions. So that's kind of the difference between collecting and integrating. And in my mind, is that you have that. You still have the relationship. You still have the people you can talk to that know the system. So it's that's the difference in my mind.
They can help you navigate those obstacles that you're going to find.
Yes.
Rather than you try to figure it out and try to work your way through that. That's a good way of putting it. Let's move to the leadership role. Understanding the differences that we just explained in the software world and our industry. Let me ask you, in the leadership context, what do you think a collector is?
As a leader, like in a school, or
yep, this concept works universally.
Yeah,
probably not discussed the same way that I'm going to discuss it. But
I feel like I'm going to take a guess and I'm going to totally miss.
It's okay. You're in a safe place, Ethan.
Okay, all right. I guess the first thing that goes in my mind is I collect systems, but I don't actually use them.
Not necessarily.
Okay. See, that was my
from a leadership perspective, right? So, what do leaders?
That would be evident of a not so great leader.
When we talk about leadership, what is their primary job as a leader?
To delegate and to lead. My job is to make sure that you're doing your job.
Right.
Have you heard that before? Said it like 7 times.
Yeah. I say that in jest. There's some truth to it, but there's also other aspects of it that I really don't elaborate, because usually the context that I make that comment is I just need people to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I need people to do their job. To be honest, if I have to do their job and my job,
then why are they there?
What's the point of them being there? And I don't have time to do both.
Right. So then you're deficient,
Right. And so one of the worst aspects of a leader's job is accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell people, my subordinates, your job is to make sure that you do your job so I don't have to do my job. If I have to jump down and hold you accountable, you're not going to like it. If I am there because you're doing some knucklehead thing and I'm being forced to do my job, you're not going to like it. So do your job, and for the most part, we'll be good. When I talk about that, we don't ever talk about the accountability side, the actual leadership qualities, right? So like we were talking about the software industry and school safety, we have to talk about leadership in our schools kind of in the same way. Leaders who are collectors have people who are responsible for tasks, and I delegate everything to them. I'm not developing them. I'm not understanding what they're doing. I'm not working through making them better, more confident. And worst of all, I'm not setting them up to be good leaders. We see this every day in our school environments, our school culture. I've talked to you about this in many different ways. Our principals, generally speaking, I know that there are some that are superstars, but generally speaking, nothing happens on a school campus without the knowledge and or approval of the principal. Why? They're all adults. They all have the same goals in mind, educating our kids, keeping our kids safe. Why do they have to ask permission for everything? Why do our school staff, certified and classified staff members, why do they have to ask permission to call 911?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Right? Why do they have to ask permission to do something? Why do they just defer accountability to somebody else? Why can't they take action in certain realms? I get there's other legal and formal processes. Why can't we trust our employees to do their job? Those are collectors. They collect the staff that will do what I tell them to do. I don't know how many times I went to a school and asked, well, why didn't you do this? I couldn't find the principal. The principal wasn't here. And I will say, one of the things I never envisioned until I went to the school was how many meetings the principals had every day, and how many of those meetings took that principal away from the campus. I mean, a significant amount of time away from the campus. Law enforcement and in emergency management and crisis response, you can't have that.
No, you don't have time for, oh, I need to talk to this person and I need to get their answer. It's like, you're an adult.
That's right.
Like, just make the decision and own it.
Right.
Because making a decision is probably better than not doing anything at all.
Well, not doing anything is at all is a decision not to do something, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. But most likely, whatever you decide to do other than not doing anything is probably going to be better than not doing anything.
We say it all the time, is we try to reduce the reactionary gap.
Yeah.
And by reducing the reactionary gap, what we're really saying is, I have to train you to make decisions on your own. You see something, you identify what it is, and you know what action to take. Not, hey, Principal Jones, I think I just saw a guy with a gun. I just saw this happen. Or the other day, I noticed little Sally was coming to school with cut marks on her arms. Have the ability, the knowledge, and the confidence to make those decisions that you need to take some sort of action, right? So, but we see it all the time when you're in an emergency crisis. And this is one of the, I come from a background where I had to be trained. I didn't just walk in to be an incident commander. I had to be parts of that process. I did have some training, but it was through years and years of experience. And by my position, I came to where I was incident commanders of several, whether I was the incident commander and or part of the unified command. I didn't just walk in and they say, oh, you're it today. That was years and years. But if you walk into a school and you say, or you ask, all right, this happened. Who's in command? Almost 100% of the time, they're going to say, oh, that's the principal. But this was my aha moment. And I knew I was in trouble. I asked the principal, okay, this happened, and what are you supposed to do? I don't know. My assistant principal is responsible for that. Is that person a builder or a collector?
Collector.
They don't understand the processes. They did what they did with everything else. They assigned somebody to be responsible for it, and they just hope that they're doing their job. However, part of their job is to train people to do all of the things, ancillary tasks that are needed to bring people up to speed. But then at the moment of truth, we call it bang in our world. When bang happens, whatever that means, when that happens, everyone's going to be looking to the principal for leadership. And there's no time to figure it out. And you can't sit there and say, hey, what's the information I have? How do I compare that to my policies? What are the policies here? What is law enforcement expecting me to do? What is the fire department expecting me to do? From a law enforcement and fire department perspective, I'm thinking that if you're in charge, you understand what you're supposed to do. And here's the problem with that, because I will tell you that by experience, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, I'm going to do it for you.
Because you can't train someone in the moment.
That's right.
It's better for you to just do it.
Just do it, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't understand it, and you don't understand what needs to be done, I'm going to do it, and you're going to lose control.
Mm-hmm.
And some people might say, oh, that's great. That's his responsibility, until we're both sitting in court and somebody says, Kelly, why did you do this? Because he didn't know what to do. He didn't understand what he needed to do. That doesn't look good. And why didn't you train them? I can't train them when I have kids that are injured that need to be transported. I can't train them on how to reunify. We understand, we see how horrible it is when law enforcement has to take over the incident and do reunification. They have no clue, but they're going to do it. If you don't understand it and you don't understand how that process works, then somebody else is going to do it. And it's not going to be perfect, but it'll get done. When you talk about builders, now we're talking about, I understand what I'm supposed to do. And what I'm supposed to do is understand what you're supposed to do. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to make sure that you have the training. I'm going to be trained as well. I'm going to participate in every drill, every exercise. If I don't know about it, I'm going to become a student of what it is that I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to do things like teaching you how to make a decision, how to solve a problem. I'm going to teach you in emergency response. I'm going to teach you in management. I'm going to teach you how to do your job and how to do my job. Why am I going to teach you how to do my job? Is because as a principal, as a leader of this school, as a leader in the district, I have to hold you accountable. We already talked about this and how surprised I was at the lack of time that many of our principals spent on their campus because they were in meetings after meetings. If you have an emergency, based upon my observations, granted the sample size was small, but nobody seemed to mind this. but based upon my observations of how little time they spend on their campuses, then they're not going to be there when that emergency happens. So you're not going to be there. You're not going to be the incident commander. You're not going to be responsible, right? Now, at some point, are you going to have to go back to the school and take over? Maybe, but you should be able to do that. You should be able to make a phone call. Hey, Miss Jones, how are you doing? Do you need anything from me? Where are you at? And then work based upon the response to those questions, right? But you should have confidence that somebody can hold the line and make good decisions while you're not there. And that's what a builder does. And this is universal. So there's a lot of people who just delegate. That's not leadership, that's management. Hey, I got this task, you do it, right? That's what managers do, administrators do. But if you are looking at leadership, there's a working definition that I like to use. And I've talked to many leadership experts about this definition, and they seem that's as good as any, because there are lots of different leadership styles and philosophies and so forth. But here's the working definition that I have for leadership. Leadership is the art and science of influencing others to accomplish tasks in the furtherance of your mission and objectives because they want to. Not just because you told them to, but they truly understand the mission, they understand the vision, and they understand what is expected of them. And that includes making decisions during critical incidences. If you have the ability to delegate, the delegation should be to learn how to do something, to manage something, to allow you to do your job, which includes much more than just discipline and accountability. If you take the time to understand leadership, that frees you up to do your actual job, making sure everything's running correctly, troubleshoot, identify future risks, identify gaps in training, provide that training. All of those things that really work towards the development of your staff, as we like to say for succession training, is I want to train you, I want to develop you to the point that you can do my job and that you could be my replacement. Right now, we test, we interview, we do all of that stuff. We don't necessarily look at competency. We don't look at, and many times, especially in academia, it's more important that you have a certain degree than it is certain capabilities. One of the things I advocate as much as I can, I usually falls on deaf ears, because the primary mission is not school security. I can tell you that, right? They believe there's many more things involved at a higher level than they prioritize school safety is. But it usually settles on their first priority is educating future generations, right? So they put an emphasis on that. But I will tell you that I have seen and experienced good principals who were completely incompetent. I would remove them during an emergency because they just can't handle stress very well. And that should be part of the hiring process. We're going on how many years now?
20, at least 25, 26?
7.
27? Okay.
This next anniversary would be the 27th.
Oh, man.
So if we are not developing our leaders to be well-rounded in their day-to-day operations and their emergency and crisis management and risk management and training and stuff of their staff, if they can't do that, they should not be in that position.
No.
I will tell you, if you think not educating a kid is liability laden, wait until you mess up an emergency.
Yeah.
Wait till that comes. There was an article I saw last week. I forget where it was. There was a shooting somewhere at a school, and the headline was, and I'm going to get this number wrong, 24 families sue for wrongful death.
Wow.
Right? So, and we've talked about this before. There's, in some cases, people believe they have absolute immunity from prosecution and or liability, civil liability, because they work for a government agency. And while that may be true on the surface, as soon as we start adding negligence in there and that you weren't doing your job, you were working outside of your scope by not working within your scope, then it becomes a whole different issue. And in many cases, the district can be and has been sued, and individuals within that district can and have been sued. So leadership is a big part of that. And there's a concept, I guess, it's more than it's a practice called vicarious liability. So that's when one of my subordinates did something wrong and I knew about it and I didn't correct it, or I never provided them with the ability to do it correctly, I am also liable.
Oof.
I am, as a district, as a manager, as a leader, as an administrator, I'm also liable.
Yeah.
And in some cases, that's why we have micromanagers, right? Because they think they're responsible for everything. But the reality is, when you do that, you just can't. You don't have time to do it all correctly. So you need to manage that. So there you go. Builders and collectors. Builders are people who understand the problem and build a solution. They build their staff, they build their systems, they build whatever. Collectors, they know there's a problem out there and they quickly go, oh, here's a solution, we'll buy it, without understanding the whole process or what you have involved. Obviously, we're advocates of builders. We consider ourselves builders, both in the education of our schools and education of our safety leaders and our products that we build. We struggle with collectors. People struggle with collectors. And in many times, I will say, builders can do it for cheaper.
Yeah.
So certainly in the long run, it's a lot less expensive to do it right the first time than it is to do it a second time. And that's part of leadership, is understanding what you're buying. I will tell you, I listened to a podcast yesterday, and the primary topic, regardless of what the question was, ended up being about the integration of systems and management of systems so this was a discussion from the security side, which people have to understand. Security is different than safety. They're related, but safety and security are two different things. But from the security side, working through facilities and the integration of technology into security and so forth. So building systems that can talk to other systems is a big thing, because all of the technology and facilities people are being completely overwhelmed by the number of systems that are being purchased by their safety staff when they don't understand what they're buying or how it's going to work. The state and federal mandates aren't helping, because they're saying you need a panic button. They'll give you some parameters, but those parameters that they're giving are very limited. And there's really not a lot of clarity into what works and what doesn't work. And many of the collectors, through their marketing, are saying, you have to do this because this other process is going to fail. It always fails during an emergency. And that's not usually the case. Working through and understanding all of those little nuances is important. And so people have to be educated. They have to ask good questions when they're looking for systems. Leaders have to lead. And what I mean by that is, from a district perspective, the district safety people have to understand what's available and how it works, where it fits onto the incident timeline, and what's the best way to resolve their issue. So if you need any help, give me a call. 805-689-9629.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.